The Yvrain tier Gilliman, the Horus tier Black Rage, and the Admech tier Toaster. It's the Vox Cascadia podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Chuck Pepper. With me tonight, as always, are Connor and Tyler. Connor, Tyler, say hello.
Hey everyone, hope you guys are all doing well and had a good Valentine's Day, whether that's spent with a significant other or the most important thing in our lives, the hobby itself.
I don't know how I'm supposed to follow that up, honestly. Man, you got me right there. Yeah, how y'all doing tonight?
I'm doing great. It's good that we've got Tyler speechless at the very start of our podcast. I like it. So,
You know, I'm glad that we all know that Kill Team is the most important thing in our life.
It really is. If we don't have Kill Team, what else do we have?
well, I can't get my girlfriend to listen to the podcast, so I'm going to go with yes, it is. So, it's been, again, about a week since we've chatted. Let's get caught up. Connor, what have you been up to?
Not a ton hobby wise. My challenge has already started to fall through, but whatever. It has made significant progress in getting models done, which was the main goal of it. What I spent the last week doing was I was trading a bunch of bits to people and saw some cool bits in my bits box while fishing out the ones I was trading, and that led me to a Skitarii kit bash because of course it did, and it was probably one of the most intense things I've attempted, and unfortunately it just fell apart. Like literally, I just clipped too much and it wasn't coming together. For this hand holding an axe from a Sister Celestine or a Sacrosanct kit. But thankfully, I have a second box of those, so I got the original bit and just trimmed it back up the way I wanted, and it's coming together pretty well. I've been painting it throughout the day. Beyond that, it was very fun. I met your friend Nick the other day. He came and saw me and Grant, one of my beloved Eldar fans in our our group. We played against him and his Blades of Cain, and Nick was really cool. He learned Kill Team, and his models look great. So well done, Nick, if you're listening. Those things are amazing.
I'm glad he brought his models with him. I think we spent Thanksgiving weekend painting those, and I painted the Blooded during that time too. And I've been trying to get him in the game forever, and he's finally actually got a team to play. So thank you for being a gracious host. He had nothing but nice things to say about you guys. And then Tyler, what about yourself? What have you been up to? I know last week was you got the desk together. Have you got some time at the desk?
I've been working like a dog, honestly. I've been doing nothing but work nonstop. I think I slept most of Saturday, worked Sunday, and then it's been that since then.
Then what was all this Kill Team's most important thing in the world talk we had just a few minutes ago?
I mean, I have to have a place to store my Kill Team stuff, which is literally an entire room worth of stuff at this point.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of getting in those size collections. So, all right, you get a pass this week for doing real life stuff.
Yeah, I feel that having the huge room of Kill Team. Out of curiosity, Tom, I was thinking this to myself because we're gonna need them eventually for what we've been working on, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But how much Kill Team boards of terrain do you just have on hand, like either in your house or that you can just like pick up in a moment's notice?
I have like 34 tables worth of terrain, approximately. So yeah, quite a bit. That's like in quick access. That's not necessarily just mine. Personally, I own like 22 sets of terrain, full tables, and then a whole bunch of extra scatter to fill in those tables, in addition to what comes in the boxes.
That is both incredibly impressive and terrifying as well because I'm looking over at my closet. I'm trying to get to like maybe having 6 to 8 tables eventually. I can't even imagine how much storage space 20 has got to be. That sounds insane.
You know, I'm very lucky that Jeff at Shift Games allows me to store most of my boards there. So that really, really helps out.
I mean, Tyler, it sounds like at this point you're basically working to pay for storage space for your boards besides what Jeff lets you keep it shiv. Speaking of boards, I talked last week about how I got going on my Beta Decima board, and I'm pretty close to done with it. I spent a lot of time doing it this weekend. Found a great little scheme on Reddit, which I'm always about finding a good scheme, and did some oil washes on it. And I think I just have some OSL that I want to do, and it'll be ready to go.
I saw that on the Discord and it's looking crazy good. Looks almost like the photos.
Well, that's what I'm going for, so that's good because I'm the box art simp. So
Well, I mean, hey, the box art It looks better in person, is what I can say. Is there's another guy, Dorath or David, up in the Tacoma area I play games against or just nearby with. He brought his to Hobby Hangout last Thursday. It was really really cool looking. He got hazard stripes on it, so my Iron Warrior fans out there are going to be excited by those. But it looks good in person, but the board itself is still a little bit bland. I think they could have done something to make it pop a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if they come out with anything down the road or if they're just going to stick with this one box like they kind of did with the Into the Dark, the boarding action stuff where it was all pretty much the same and they gave us some drop pods and stuff to go in it.
I think that what we're going to see is a lot of the terrain from the character packs, so like Salvation and Nightmare, is what's made to fill in Beta Decima and make it actually playable and fun. Because as it stands now, it's not very playable, in my opinion.
Well, I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but I'm looking forward to getting that board up and running. So, well, like we mentioned earlier, today is right on Valentine's Day. It's actually the day before Valentine's Day. So I know I've got some plans to sit on the couch, eat some takeout, and watch a new season of Love is Blind because I can't get enough of that show. Now, if you guys were to pick out of the 41st millennium, what would be your favorite romance or who would you be the most excited to go on a Valentine's Day excursion with?
Hey, Editor Eric here, just chiming in real quick to interrupt Chuck and friends. They're about to talk about two different books that are about a decade old, about Eisenhorn and Gaunt's Ghosts. I just wanted to give everybody a chance who hasn't read these books to pause for a moment and jump to the 11-minute mark if you don't want to hear any relatively small spoilers about these books. Um, so wait for the pause. I'll give you a couple seconds and we'll jump right back into it.
I mean, like, not for me personally, but in the 41st millennium, I would like to see the Lion and Farsight kiss. I think that they're just like a perfect match. They're both pretty good as far as the setting goes, in their current iterations. I just think they'd be great bros and a great romance. They like swords, they like justice, it'd be good.
I mean, it's important to have a lot of things in common with someone you're going to spend time and do other things with. So that sounds like a pretty good one to me. I always wanted to see, and spoiler alert coming for the Eisenhorn series, a couple of them. I always wanted to see Beckwin and Eisenhorn. That unrequited, that love that they can't put together because she's a blank and he's a psyker is something that I've always wanted to see, and maybe she could actually pierce that cold heart of his.
Do you think it could happen with the new Beckwin? I mean, because she can like turn off her blankness.
Well, I think that was more of a like a technology thing, wasn't it? And less of a like just doing it. So I think if she has that and she could use it, then maybe. But I think he's kind of past that. I don't know. I just like Eisenhorn. I like the other little romance sides that he had in there.
It's always good to have the hero himself have the romantic options. I have yet to actually read the Eisenhorn books, but I have the first two or three somehow. A friend of mine gave me his old stack of Black Library books, which got me into the Gaunt's Ghosts series. So thank you for those. Which also, speaking of which, gives me the romance I'd pick. There is a Gaunt's Ghost companion book, essentially, called Double Eagle by Dan Abbott himself, the hero of the 41st Millennium's fiction team, I guess. But in the story, there's a Fantine bomber group led by a guy named Oscar Viltry, and it's essentially, long story short, it's just imagine the Battle of Britain, but in the 41st millennium, fighting against chaos. It's pretty much that as a story, but it works really well. And there's a little love story between one of the bombers named Oscar and then like a woman he meets on the planet named Becca, and it's a surprisingly like heartfelt romance between two characters in the most grimdark universe there is. So I really, really like their romance. I think it surprisingly fits well for Valentine's Day, especially considering I just reread the book. So I wanted to make sure I could remember it properly, and I did. If you have not, I'd highly recommend reading Double Eagle. It's a very fun read.
I have heard that that's a really good one, and I haven't read anything bad by Dan Abnett yet. And I apologize if I spoiled part of Eisenhorn for you, Eric. You're going to have some extra work to do tonight to put in a note about where the spoilers are, so people can skip ahead. So appreciate all the hard work you do behind the scenes.
Not to be that guy, but like spoilers, like 10 years after something's released, kind of walking a thin line there. Not everyone's read it, but sure. It's hard to avoid at this point.
Yeah, like it would be really bad if I mentioned that Darth Vader is actually Luke Skywalker's father. Spoiler alert, but I think we can get past it. But yeah, that's also true. I have no one to blame but myself if I am actually upset at a spoiler for a series that's been going on since 20 years before I was even born or something.
I'm just gonna throw this spoiler out there. In the end of the death, there's this part where the stowaway walks into Horus and the Emperor fighting, and he goes, "Wow, this really is the end of the death, isn't it?" And then he walks away and he's never seen again.
Well, I guess I don't have to read that one now. Now you're going to tell me that Horace dies at the end of it too.
Yeah, it's that titular line. Very important.
I'm actually reading Horse Rising right now as part of the Chuck's book club we started in the Discord, and that line actually does come up quite a few times where they keep saying the end and the death.
I thought the line was that, wow, Horace, you truly have become the Warhammer 40k, but I might be misremembering.
It's one of those. I'm not sure. I think he says that, or I am your father.
We have just angered every lore fan that listens to this podcast. We are not really, but a little bit sorry.
But I don't think any Star Trek fans even listen to this podcast, so we're not ruining it for them.
You're going to get us banned and disbarred, Chuck. Stop it.
All right, now that we've angered half the internet, let's talk about our main topic for tonight. Let's talk about tournaments. So, going to your friendly local game store and playing on a weeknight or a weekend is super fun. But I think personally, one of the best things about what we do is showing up and playing in a tournament. I want to talk about tournaments, what they are, when are you ready for a tournament, and kind of some tournament experiences we've had. So, Tyler, can you start us off? Talk to me about, what's a tournament?
I mean, realistically, a tournament is getting together with your friends from the internet and playing a lot of Kill Team back to back, more than anything.
And after our little speech earlier, and we have no internet friends, where would one find a tournament?
You can find them on BCP, or you can find them in our Discord, killteamcascadia.com. We'll have a link to it, or you can find us on various other places, other Discords such as Command Point. There's obviously a link there. Um, yeah.
And so BCP, Best Coast Pairings, is where a lot of the tournaments are organized, including the Kill Team Cascadia tournaments. Now, what should one expect when they go to a tournament? How many games are you going to be playing? How long is it going to take for those games?
Really, the amount of games that you'll be playing comes down to the tournament itself. Though the average standard you find is either 3 to 4 rounds, depending on the organizers and rather when the event starts itself. For generally how much time, most seem to be either an hour 45 to 2 hours worth of kill team, with about a 30-minute break in between each game. Another place to look, though, as well, beyond just the tournaments themselves, or rather on BCP or best server ever KTCs, is whenever you go to the local game store, if you have kind of if you've like moved to a new area for college or just looking to get into a tournament, ask at the store itself. Odds are there'll either be some posters or they'll link you to their website or something. But it never hurts to ask, and you'll be shocked to see the amount of local tournaments that get hosted with relatively little fanfare.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that Kill Team Cascadia, killteamcascadia.com, does well, is helping to bring those multiple game stores together into localized areas. So I know that we're a great place to look out for it. But yeah, your local local game store may having tournaments or tournament nights that we don't even know about. So definitely check with them too. And then what about, so we talked about how many games there is. What should one expect about from board layouts?
Board layouts can really vary from tournament to tournament. We get a little wild with our layouts. We incorporate a lot of different layouts that you won't see at national events such as LVO. Dakota uses his own terrain and then a mixture of Into the Dark with his own layouts. Places like Nova, they used all Octarius last time with a set layout from a terrain pack. And in the UK, they're often using a terrain pack also from, say, like Turning Point Tactics or something like that.
Yeah, I know that Dakota with Squad Games does a really great job of designing his own packets, and it works really well with his specific terrain that he does. And I've seen the Turning Point Tactics ones too, and they're very different from I think what we would see at a Kill Team Cascadia tournament, but in a good way. I think they're more dense in the middle, uh, but and it's nice to see a variety across the tournament scene.
Very, very true. Yeah. Another one you'll often see, of course, is now that they're getting a little bit more popular, just in general, is the Into the Dark layouts. Thankfully, those are a little bit more standardized by Games Workshop themselves, so you know you're getting at least an idea of this is what Games Workshop continues the proper way to play the game. Of course, there are some problems with that, at least to me, but I think just having the 10 layouts that you'll know and see every time is very useful for making sure players are aware of how those it'll help the players be aware of the traps that might fall them because you'll see the same maps over and over again. So you'll be aware of like, hey, this hallway is really hard to move through, even though it doesn't look like it.
I know that's one thing that Squad Games is working on with their asymmetrical Into the Dark map packs. So it's nice to see that the community themselves are going out and trying to fix what people think are kind of stagnant.
One thing I will say is that while map packs can be really good for certain things like Into the Dark, I'm personally not a fan of map packs for war events. I kind of like to mix things up, try to get a balanced board, but let people be surprised at what they're going to see the day of.
Yeah, very, very true for KTC events, especially. It's very fun to roll up and see what giant terrains you guys are pulling from because I know there's definitely been some Warcry terrain. There's always the old classic, like I think it was either 8th or ninth edition launch box, those like ruinous buildings that kind of work like Octarius, but you'll see those, which are really good boards actually. And so I'm looking on eBay every once in a while to see if I can snag some of that terrain for having it on hand. But Tyler, I think you might know which one I'm talking about. It's the Warcry one with the blood trough. That's probably one of my favorite terrains I see you guys use because it's just so cool looking. You guys did a great job designing that one. And who doesn't want to fight in a giant blood canal? That just it's so Warhammer. It's perfect.
I had a lot of fun painting that one in particular. The Blood Troughs is one of my favorite boards stylistically that I've done.
So we've talked a little bit about timeline games and board layouts, but Tyler, if you could speak to this, how are the matchups made? So when you arrive at the tournament and you're using the Best Coast Pairings app or the website, how is the first round determined, and how do the rounds get determined, at least in the Kill Team Cascadia tournaments going forward?
Right. So first round pairings are always done randomly. There's not really any control over that. So you can get paired up whoever. From then on, it's done by total victory points, followed by primaries, then secondaries, and then random for ours. So basically, it's like total points you've scored, and then from there, how many secondaries you've scored. That's really going to who determine who you get paired up against in the next round. So the better you do, the better your opponent is. And from there on out, it continues from round to round. And eventually we like to generally run our events to where we get a single winner for them.
So if I stroll up to my first event and I get paired up with Jimmy Kelly and he brings his Felgor and just beats me down, I'm not going to get paired up against somebody who just beat somebody else down in the next game, right?
I mean, no, you're not going to get paired up against someone who beat someone else down in the next game. First two rounds can be a little dicey sometimes because sometimes you have sharks out in the field. Someone who's really good may get paired against someone who's even better and just kind of get blindsided. Maybe they get diced really hard or make a couple tactical mistakes and they drop down. Usually by the next rounds, it's evened out a bit. But what I will say is that you can learn a lot from those games. Generally, people are friendly at our events or most events that I've been to, and they will kind of talk you through things, and they're not going to just beat you down real hard again, at least without kind of explaining what's going on and trying to make the game better for you overall.
Yeah, I found that in events where I've gotten beaten pretty badly, the opponents are never gloating about it. They've always have a good attitude about it, and almost a lot of times almost feel bad for what they're doing. But it's a tournament, and they got to move on and play the best game that they can.
Yeah, even in like victory, it's very hard to balance of being like, I want this opponent to have a great time, but at the same time, I'm going for the win and I want to kick their ass. And so it's fun to try and play that game of still being like a good opponent and making sure that you're asking like, hey, what got you into the hobby? Why'd you pick this team? Stuff like that, while still making sure you're just playing with a clear head and everything to make sure you can get those points you need to go on to the next round victorious.
So say that you maybe are not having the best tournament, your dice aren't working for you, or your head's not in it, and you have a bad record, and you're not winning, you're not maybe where you want to be. How do you still enjoy that tournament? What are things that you can take from it that maybe it's not going to be a podium, but you can overall enjoy the day and enjoy your time and make sure you want to come back again?
I think people need to keep in mind the connections that they make at events, because these are the people you're going to see at your local hobby store. They're going to be in your local community or any events you go to. Um, they're there to support you because really events are based on the people that we see there. I know that when I go, realistically, while I may be playing to win, I'm also playing to make 3 to 4 friends by the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's what I've heard at a lot of tournaments is play 4 games, make 4 new friends. So Connor, you at Killscream didn't win, but that's okay. You took home another trophy of sorts. What was that for?
That was thankfully enough and felt really awesome to get it too. It's a real honor. But it was for like most social slash friendliest player. I can't remember what the exact title was, but essentially it was just being like that, just being a good sportsman, being a good opponent, making sure you're having a good time and just treating your opponents well with respect. Yeah, it was an honor and it really meant the world to me because it was just after I'd been accepted properly into KTC as well, so that was really awesome just to be like, hey, this is the right group of people to be putting time and effort into, and that you'll just have a great time whether you show up to our tournaments completely brand new or whether you're going to be fighting Chuck and Tyler and Brandon at the top tables going for that first. You're going to have a great time either way.
I think it's important to bring up that we've had a lot of people show up who've played maybe 3 games of Kill Team or less. Sometimes it's their second game ever when they get to the tournament. And we're very welcoming of that. Like we want you to come and have fun and know that you're supported and go from that first tournament where you're playing your first few games and getting introduced to the community to where you're later coming back and you're placing top tables.
So let's talk about that. How do we know when we're ready for a tournament? So you got the Best Coast Pairings app. You see the Blunt Force Beatdown is on April 20th at Guardian Games in Portland. What kind of knowledge level would you want to be at before you stepped into a tournament?
I think generally you want to know how your team plays, basically. You want to know basic mechanics, kind of what tac ops you're going to select, what operatives you generally want to take. And then other than that, core rules of the game, that you have the critical ops or the whatever it's called these days, approved ops, I believe, deck, or know how to access it online. And then from there, just show up and play.
Yeah, agree with everything Tyler said there. Another thing, though, I'd often recommend is just making sure you know your unit's stat lines, both guns and their actual unit itself, practically by heart. You should know, for the most part, relatively what your entire team saves on, what they hit on. If someone asks you, hey, what's the damage of this gun? You should relatively be able to answer them without having to look at the data cards, especially just because since there's time limits on this, if you're flipping through cards or flipping through books, that can add up a lot of your time. And A, it's just not the most fun for either you or your opponent if you have to keep looking that stuff up. And B, just really eats into that time. So you might be only having 30 minutes left in the in the round, but only on turn 2 or 3, which then is just going to make you play worse rather than playing at your best potential you could be.
I think it's important to say, though, while that's ideal, that you don't want to be playing with data cards or having to reference your book. If you're still at that point, don't be intimidated to go to a tournament. You're more likely, especially if you're having trouble finding people to play with or finding community, because a tournament is where you're going to find that community and find other people to help you raise your skill level to the point where you're not referencing those things.
Yeah, I think that I mean, I know that I still even just before I retired my Casterkin, I still reference the book every once in a while because it's a lot of numbers and there's a lot of rules, but as much knowledge as you can have about them is good. And then what about maybe selecting a team for your first tournament? Should you go with something like intercession or should you go with something that's more complex or what kind of standard would you use?
I'd say just go with what team you enjoy the most because even if intercession might be simpler or maybe like better than the team you particularly care to play, you'd rather just like any hobby aspect where people say which army should I play the thing that appeals to you. Make sure that if you're going to put all the time and money into going to this event and getting your team ready, that you're going to have fun playing them. You want to be making sure that even if you go 0 and 4, at least you felt wow, I learned something new about my favorite team, like a new combo that someone explained I could have done at a certain point to score like two more victory points or something, or someone complimented your models on the paint job, or is it, oh wow, you're playing Warp Coven? I never see Warp Coven. That's awesome that you're playing them. Stuff like that is going to make those days just that much more exciting for you.
Yeah, I think that's super important to, like you said, Connor, play something that you think is cool. There's a thing in this hobby called the rule of cool, which means that maybe you bring a gun because it looks sweet on your guy rather than it's going to be the most like sweaty meta chasing weapon in the game. So you've found a tournament, you got some rules knowledge, and you've picked your team. What status of paint job do you need your team to be in? Do you need it to be like ready to walk right off the kill team table into the golden demon? Can you have great plastic? Where are we at with that?
Yeah, I mean, realistically, you have to have a Golden Demon ready entry, because we do judge for paint. No, not at all. What we want from a team is we want kind of basics. We want your model to be primed. We want it to be base, and we want the three colors on it, so that you put some effort into it to make it playable and presentable to your opponents generally. And the reason for that is that your opponent puts time into painting their models. You want to respect that also, and you don't want to remove the immersion from it because we all like to get into our games realistically.
Yeah, I would say going against an opponent with a team that you can tell that they put love and care into and they're super proud of it and they look great on the table, it makes the game even that much more fun, even if it's not going good for you. I've been shot off the board by some gorgeous looking teams and still had a great time doing it.
Yeah, at least if like you're getting killed by beautiful people feels a little bit better, which is always nice when you're tabled by turn 3 or something.
Absolutely. If I'm ever murdered, they better be like absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, you need it to be like someone that's in Sports Illustrated or just like someone in a movie. You know, like if Paul Rudd killed me, I'd be okay with that. But please don't kill me, Paul Rudd. I'm sure you're listening, but I'd rather just have like dinner with you or something instead of getting killed.
Yeah, Paul Rudd had some great feedback about the first two podcasts, so I'm really excited that he's a fan. So, talk about the people you're going to meet at a tournament. And let's talk not necessarily about who they are, but on the range of how competitive they're going to be. Is everybody going to be there just trying to be a killer? As people are going to just be there for the hobby aspect? Who are we going to see at a tournament?
So there's definitely people who are there for all different kinds of reasons. You have people who are there to win, to take home top spot, to score ITC points, depending on how large the event is. And then there are other people who are there just to hang out with friends. Um, Realistically, it can be a bit of both. Um, there are other people that are there because that's the time they get to show off their models, to other people, that they don't get to see very often. I think all of us work really hard on what we do. So it's nice to have the praise of others in our community for that.
And when you say showing off the models, besides just the paint jobs of the models themselves, what are some other things that people do to highlight their team and build a story around it?
One thing you'll often see, especially for Kill Team, which makes it a little bit nicer hobby wise, is dioramas. We talked about them a little bit last week, and especially you, Chuck. But seeing people's dioramas they can use to tell a story about their Kill Team, kind of like Maybe these guys are veterans from an ice world, or maybe their regiment, if you're Imperial Guard, are constantly fighting Tyranids, or maybe I know Pat has a really cool Warp Coven board, and it's just like it's awesome that they were able to tell a story essentially with this unique Zinch inspired board of purples and blues and pinks and all this weird warp magic that just that adds to the flavor, especially of a Warp Coven team. I've seen people do mini like prints of the Star Striders ship and stuff to represent the rogue traders. Stuff like that is just adds to the flavor. And when you walk up to your opponent, you're meeting them for the first time, and someone drops a board with that level of decoration on it, it's just like this is going to be a great game. I'm going to have a cool opponent, and that's a great feeling.
Yeah, and I think that's another way that people can go to a tournaments, and maybe if you're not the most competitive player, you can still win because you can bring your hobby and bring your artistic piece to it. I know that at the Kill Team Cascadia tournaments, we end up having a first place, a second place, third place sportsmanship, and then a hobby winner too. Tyler, what hobby winners have we seen in the past, and what how do we judge them?
I mean, I think hobby is really judged by our gut feeling. It's the one that we're most drawn to. Things that are going to set you apart are paint, obviously, and then it's your display board. Have you captured the scene? What are you showing about your team? We get some really crazy entries. We've had like Orc Wasteland sets. We've had Space Wolves with their landing crafts crashing into their boards. We have entire temples of Zinch doing summoning of demons, wild stuff all over the place. And we see people just telling stories, telling us what their team is about and who they are, um, narratively, while they're playing a competitive game, which is incredibly amazing. And it's part of what makes 40K so cool.
Yeah, and it also shows off another skill of the hobby beyond just like display board building. But I've seen people with like practical effects to their boards, whether that be like basic LED lights, or there's people that use like smoke machines, like little mini ones that display stuff. I haven't seen that in person, but I've seen it on Reddit, and that was really, really cool to see a guy who like could have smoke appear on his display board, stuff like that. It's just like that's such a micro aspect of the hobby, but whenever you can see it pulled off, it's really, really cool. And especially for Kill Team, even more so than I think 40K, people get really attached to the models and characters because you put a lot more attention into them because you're only really going to be using like 10 to 20 models at any given time, or like seven if you're a Space Marine. Oh, excuse me, seven if you're a Space Marine player. But I'm sure you could ask probably every person, and half of us would have an answer of what model this is, how long they've served, what their like specialties are. I know for myself that every Scutari I run has a 19-digit long name of various admechicified names, because I don't know why. I just like that, and that was a fun little thing to do. And yeah, it's awesome to have stuff like that involved in the hobby and see what people come up with.
Yeah, adding some flair to your team is something that's really nice too, and giving it a story about the battles they've been in. A lot of that goes in the narrative piece, but I know that I had a time where I had a Blood Angel Space Marine Sergeant in Big 40K who stood down, I want to say it was a Hive Tyrant or something, and lived, and he got some accolades and some glory for that one. He didn't make it through the next game though,
He died a hero of the Imperium, and that's all that matters.
as all Blood Angels do.
Do you guys have an MVP that sticks out from your games? A unit that has made an incredible play time and time again? Something like that?
I mean, my Melta, she's always the MVP because everybody's just so afraid of her, and then I'll usually pop 4KD on her, kill one person, and try and charge another one. And yeah, she's the true hero of the Imperium.
Funnily enough, for me, it's a model you'd least expect, but it's Midas Basic Skitari Dictat. That guy has secured either a tie or a victory for me at least 4 or 5 times. There was one time in the final activation I needed to get a capture point and also score Headhunter because it was the last one I had, and he charged and killed a Sergeant Reaver. And lived. Like it was statistically impossible. I should do 4 damage to this Reaver, but I did it, and he pulled through. And I can't believe how often that happens. Meanwhile, my alpha, as much as I love them, they suck in melee combat. Despite hitting on fours and having 4 dice, I roll probably 4 misses 60% of the time with that guy. So my alpha sucks, and my dictat Philippe, he's great, and I love Philippe. So thank you to Philippe for securing so many wins for me.
Tyler, what about you? Who's your MVP?
I've had my Sky Splinter Assassin for Hand of the Archon regularly do triple kills on their activation, which just gets kind of nutty sometimes. No one really expects them.
So going back to tournaments in general, I think one of the main things to think about was when you're ready for a tournament is when you want to go have a day of fun playing Kill Team. I think that's kind of the overall most important thing to remember and to think about when you're ready for a tournament. So you're probably ready already.
Yeah, if you're listening to a podcast about guys talking about Kill Team, you're in the right crew. Just show up to one. Just, be ready to have a good time. Be ready to probably get your ass handed to you. Most first tournaments kind of go that way. But the best part is you'll have a great time, and you're going to meet a bunch of cool people, and you get to roll dice for like 8 hours, which is, you'll be exhausted by the end of the day, but it's a great time.
I gotta say, the Kill Team community is exceptionally cool. I've been playing war games since second edition Warhammer, and I think that the Kill Team community is by far the best I've ever been involved with.
So let's talk about our first tournament experiences. What was the first tournament you went to, Connor?
Is this strictly Kill Team or just tournaments for tabletop games in general?
Let's keep it to Kill Team.
Just Kill Team. Okay, because there was only one other really one before it, so that keeps it simple. But first Kill Team tournament I went to was up at in Seattle, and I've mentioned before, but Waystone Wargaming, great place. If you're in the Seattle area, go visit them. They're awesome people. I cannot shout out to them enough. But I went there without real any idea of what to expect. But I was excited because I had heard from my friend Ryan that it was a cool time. Sadly, he couldn't join me for this one, but he said it would be a good time, and it was. It was just 3 rounds, very mixed thing. Like there was 2 boards of Into the Dark, 3 or 4 boards of Open, and it was just kind of random. It was fun. It was low key, so it didn't matter about like intense competitive integrity in terms of not competitive integrity, but like equalization, I guess, of boards layouts and stuff like that. I think it was still before Critical Ops even came out, so it was those weird missions like secure data spirits from the core book, which like add defense dice to your models if you're standing on them. But it was a great time. I think I went 1 win and 2 losses. It's been a while, so I can't remember. But it's where I met Brandon Bean, our beloved Brandon, who got me into Cascadia, led me to meeting you guys. So that was great. It was just a good time. I got to see a bunch of teams I'd never played before, like Blooded for the first time. I got to fight some Compendium, like Grey Knights, which was awesome. I think I also fought Tyranids there as well, so it was cool. It was a lot of Compendium teams, and it was just awesome. Everyone there was super friendly. You learn a ton, and you just, like guys always said, I always am excited to meet new people and talk about Kill Team or just like 40K in general, because we're all nerds, so it's fun to talk about why.
Yeah, I kind of talked about my first experience last week, I think it was, running into Tyler in the first round, but while he beat me into submission, he was very gracious in doing it. I also played a game later on that day with Jeremy, who's known in our Kill Team community around here. He's one of the great teachers at Guardian Games every Monday if you need a game. And what I remember about that game is it was my first and I think only time playing against Vet Guard, and I got a charge into 3 of his Vet Guard with one of my chain swords, and he went to town on those guys. And I ended up winning that game. But just the thing out of the tournament that I really got though was how much fun it was to play Kill Team all day. Because normally I was a one night a week playing in my local store, and not really getting much of a flow. But playing back to back to back games, I learned so much that day, and tournaments have been my favorite thing ever since then.
Yeah, you said back to back, and that's another thing to point out too, is you will, most people, we play maybe 1, maybe 2 games a night, like once a week, once every other week. But playing those back to back games, you'll realize mistakes you made in the previous round and correct them in the next one. And that makes you feel like a tactical genius when you realize something you could have done and then correct it. It feels so good. Your endorphins are rushing, and you're like, I am the greatest player ever. I'm a genius at math. The dice gods will never betray me. And then you roll 4 1s when you went hot on overcharged plasma, and it kind of brings you back to humility, which is always good. But it's just fun to put those mistakes out and fix them right away.
there's nothing that'll improve you faster, Kill Team, than going to a tournament. So if you want to get good, as I say, go to your local tournament.
Tyler, what was your first tournament experience?
For Kill Team, my first tournament experience was Tacoma. Um, there wasn't really anything before that. I believe that the Board and Sword out in Beaverton held one time, and I didn't even know about like Best Coast pairings or anything like that at the time, so I missed that. But then there was the first Tacoma.
And then let's talk about a time that we maybe didn't have a great experience at a tournament, but then upon reflecting on it, we actually really did enjoy it, and it actually turned out to be great. Or maybe we went into a tournament and we weren't super excited about the tournament, but we'd already signed up, and then it turned around and turned into a great experience for us. I know that going into Kill Scream 2, I wasn't ready. I didn't feel like I'd prepared enough. I hadn't got as many games as I wanted to in, and then like it always happens with me, I get to the tournament and had a great time and did pretty good and way better than I thought I would. So even though I wasn't feeling very confident going into it, I still had a great time and got to play against, I think, everybody I played against I'd never played against before, which was awesome too.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, man. I've had a great time at every single tournament that I've ever gone to. I've been pretty stoked for all of them. I think Tacoma this last year was the one I was least stoked for, mostly because I didn't have a lot of time to prep for it. But it's always great to go and just see people and play some games and have fun.
Yeah, I can say there's never really been a time where I didn't have a positive experience. There's been some rough matches where you're just like, man, I screwed up real bad, where you realize you made a bonehead mistake, and you lose because of it, which always sucks. There was once where I had that happen 2 games in a row against my 2 least favorite teams in the game, so I was pretty annoyed with myself. But 10 minutes later, you're like, whatever. It's just it's I'm rolling dice and moving guys. You'll feel fine within a little bit, and the nice thing is you have no one to blame but yourself. Compared to like certain other games, like video games where a teammate can just drop the ball and or someone's a dick and they just ruin the entire game for you. At least with Kill Team, you're the only one you can blame, which means that you stay positive about like, man, I really screwed up there, but I'll make sure that it never happens again. But it's very rare to ever have a bad time in a tournament, I'm willing to say.
I think that's maybe just my personal anxiety and other things that I need to deal with. My girlfriend says I need therapy, but I get trickle down therapy from her, so it's fine. She goes to therapy and I get a little bit of it.
That's just smart economics right there, especially in this economy. You can't skip out on that stuff, man.
So then y'all have enjoyed every tournament you've gone to, but what was the best tournament experience you've had? Was it a game? Was it a placing? Was it the event itself?
So for me, it's tied. There's the first Tacoma I went to, Tacoma 2023. That was just cool because I got to meet a bunch of people I knew from Discord and just see everyone for the first time, really, which was awesome. And it's also just cool to be in, like I've said, that giant of a space with that many nerds playing that many different hobby games. It's just amazing. It's also kind of cool to go to the shop section and see all these awesome like Forge World models you'll never see in person, which is always super cool. You can buy it and probably spend too much more than you need. So that's a benefit and a curse depending on how you want to look at it. But I'd say still probably number one, Kill Scream 2. I'm biased, of course, but it was just awesome. It was super cool to see like the cumulative work of all you guys come together and making this awesome event. And just there's a handful of people that I knew from my local area that was like, "Hey, you should come down." I was like, "Yeah, I'll see it," and they did, and it's really cool to see like drive 7 hours and see people or not seven. I don't know why I said seven. I guess it's seven both ways. But seeing people from your local area and just like across the room asking them how they're doing is really really fun, and it was just a great time. I went 1-0-2 because I always somehow tied. So I can say with Brandon, I am technically undefeated, which he loves to hear me say. So, it's true. I did not lose while at Kill Scream 2. So that felt awesome.
Technically, anything is the best kind of anything. Like technically right, the best kind of right. For my best tournament experience, Kill Scream 2 was amazing. I had a really great time doing it. Like I said, I went into it and wasn't super confident and ended up meeting 5 new people that I'd never played against before on day 1, and then I did good enough. I made it to day 2, and while I didn't get to go to Worlds with trying to beat Brandon Bean in the final, it was still just great to be around that group of people. It was awesome to see at the beginning where my first game was with Vince from, I think he's from Reno, playing Felgor, and he just kind of threw stuff at me. And then, but nicest dude, and just how the games got progressively more difficult, but everybody was still just amazing. And even like down to the last game with Brandon, when it was, we were rolling dice to get a chance to go to the World Championships, it was still great atmosphere and great environment.
While I didn't play in it, I have to also say Killstream 3 was super special. As far as events I've been to and played in myself, this last LVO was really incredible. Dakota knocked out of the park. It was incredible to see a lot of my internet friends that I've been talking to for years at this point, and get to hang out with them and have a couple beers and chat. That was so cool.
Yeah, LVO this year was amazing, and I can't wait to get back to next year too. So let's talk about best practices for the day of the tournament, because like we talked about, you could be playing back to back to back, and if you do really good, to back games with some hour breaks for lunch and maybe 30 minutes here and there. But what do you guys do on a tournament day to make sure that by the time you get to game 3 or game 4, you're still got your head in the game, and you're still feeling comfortable about where you're at?
So just to make sure my head stays in the game, I obviously listen to "Keep Your Head in the Game" by Troy Bolton on repeat the entire drive there.
Nick will love that. He is a huge. That's High School Musical, right?
Yes, yes, it is. I was of that generation where that was the biggest thing in the world when it came out for us.
Yeah, I'm a little bit older than you, and Nick is older than me, but that's his. Troy Bolton is like his hero.
That's awesome. He just got that much cooler. On a more real note, beyond that, as much as it sucks waking up like way earlier than you need to, like for us, if we're going down to one in Oregon, we got to leave around like 7. So I'll wake up at like 4 just to make sure I do the full routine of like showering, getting dressed, eating like some sort of proper breakfast. Because you definitely want to make sure you're like, eating a full meal to have the energy both mentally and physically to be standing for 8 hours. So definitely comfy clothes. Though I go a little bit weird. I say wear clothes you feel hot in, because to me, if I'm feeling like, man, I look real good right now, my confidence is through the roof, and I'm going to make a little bit more risky plays that most of the time will pay off.
Now, I've heard a lot of tournament things that I did not ever think I'd hear that one, and so looking fly is like Connor's like number 2 besides getting up early and having a good breakfast. I like that a lot.
Yeah, but don't dress in something hot. You don't want to sweat too much, especially when you get into a large event with 64, 48 people inside of a room. It gets very, very warm. So dress hot metaphorically, not hot physically.
Yeah, or like layers, of course, important. By the end of the night, except that except that you will not look good by the end of the night. Your hair is going to be a mess from rubbing your hands through it when you're like, oh God, do I spend this last command point on a 50-50 chance? But beyond being hot, water, obviously, extremely important. Fill up a water bottle. If you know in advance that there's going to be like a water fountain there, make sure you bring one. If you think there might not be, bring like a spare bottle. You're going to want that water, and drink at any possible opportunity you can. It's like imagine running a marathon. It's kind of that same idea.
I think you bring up a good point there as far as knowing if there's a water fountain or anything there. That's one thing that I do is I'm the guy that looks at the menu every time before I go anywhere. So I'm looking at where's parking? What am I going to have for lunch? Is this a place that I want to order something through an app, or do I need to bring my own lunch? That's a big part for me to help me with a little bit of my pre-tournament anxiety and make sure that I'm good for the day is pre-planning about what's the day going to look like, what time am I getting there, where am I parking. And I know that one thing at Kill Team Cascadia that we do is we do adult beverages. So you can generally buy a pass for the day and get some beverages if you would like to partake. Any guidelines you guys have for having fun but keeping it in the game?
I don't personally drink myself, so that saves me some money, which is nice for the tournaments. But When you do, just make sure you're keeping it responsible, of course. Chuck, I know that you often do the advice of you don't drink until after you've lost, so that way you don't mess up any potential chances of victory.
That is true. I don't have anything alcoholic until after my first loss, which could have been very bad at LVO because I lost my first game. But I just kept it good until at least lunchtime.
I also want to bring up that as far as local events go and our events, no outside food and drinks are allowed at them, or I should say, no outside alcohol. You can bring food into the events, but um, alcohol from your car or stuff like that is not allowed. So it's strictly what you can get from us and purchase from us. Uh, and it's probably like that at most venues. And make sure that you respect that because when places are offering alcohol, it's really important for them.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that's great about Kill Team Cascadia events is that in the state of Oregon, where a lot of them held, you can get single day liquor licenses, so you can actually host an event like that. And I know that like Guardian, where we had a tournament and have a tournament coming up, they have a liquor license and can, well, at least a beer license, and can serve beer on premises there too.
Yeah, it's definitely a cool feature to have, just being able to do that after a long day, drinking one cold beer or whatever. Always sounds like a good time. And bright side, the stores are always happy because it means people are a little bit more willing to. Yeah, I think dropping $200 on this Battle Force is a smart financial move right now. I think we should do it.
I know that Mox downtown Portland has gotten a lot of my money because they're right next to the Timber Stadium, and pre and post game Timbers is a bad thing for me. So, gentlemen, anything else that you want to add about tournaments? Any other words of wisdom you'd like to instill in the community?
Oh, actually, glad you mentioned that because it reminded me of what I have in my little go bag of tournament stuff. Deodorant as well, as dumb as it sounds. Just in between rounds, put on a fresh layer because you're going to be getting sweaty throughout the day, and you don't want to be reeking. So if you know you're a sweater like I am, pack a deodorant, or if need be, maybe an extra T-shirt or something just in case it gets bad. But beyond that, on a less smelly note, just be ready to be tired. Honestly, make sure you try and get a full night's rest beforehand because you're going to be standing for the most part, or at least sitting in an awkward position throughout the day, and your legs will be exhausted. I know on the car ride in the back of Brandon's car on the way home from Killstream 2, I'm pretty sure my legs were pure jello at that point.
Yeah, I think that it's a good tired though. It's one of those tireds where you get done and you look back on it and you're excited about the event and the day that you had. Tyler, what about you? Any final thoughts on tournaments?
I think we've covered most of my thoughts at this point. Just make sure that you stay hydrated. Come ready to stand for a long time and make a lot of friends.
Awesome. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate that. And if anybody has any questions about tournament stuff, or feel free to hit us up in Discord. We'd love to talk about Kill Team if you guys can't tell. So, um, we're going to start something new this week. We are going to take some questions from the community. So, in the Kill Team Cascadia Discord, we put it out to our community to ask us a few questions. And so, let's get started. We've got one from Papa Freelove, and Papa Freelove's question is: does eating a full English breakfast before playing a British made game make you better at it? What are the advantages of, say, pancakes?
So I'm gonna have to say I didn't even know what a full English breakfast was until I googled this. So I have a lot of questions about what's going on in England for what they consider breakfast. But then again, I've known to talk. Most of what my tournament days are is Fruit Loops because I don't know. They're just like they make me feel young or something. I don't know, like still like a kid where moving models all day was great. Playing with toys all day is great. So Fruit Loops is like my go-to lucky cereal for the tournament days.
I'm personally not much of a breakfast guy. It's my least favorite meal of the day. I'm more of a snake meal kind of guy. I like one big meal somewhere in the day at any indeterminate point in which I get hungry.
So we've got no on breakfast, we've got Fruit Loops, and then I will say that I love breakfast food, but I generally don't eat breakfast. I like a nice brunch on the weekends, so I'll maybe have just a little bit before a tournament, but I don't know. Full English breakfast, just like, was that bangers and mash? Is that what they have? Or like pork and beans or something just sitting in your belly when you're trying to like figure out the math on a combat. No, thank you.
I will say that out of places to have a full English breakfast outside of England, Portland does have a really good one at the Horse Brass pub.
You said horse brass? I don't think I've ever heard of that one.
Oh man, we got to go there sometime. It's fantastic, absolutely classic. Here in Portland.
Well, it's a date. And here right before Valentine's Day. So we got another question from Chris Fitzy on the Discord, and his is a little more Kill Team specific. And he said, if you could change one single interaction, rule, or item tomorrow for the greatest positive impact on the game, what would it be? And deleting entire Kill Team is not a valid response.
So personally, I think I would switch to a silhouette style for line of sight like Infinity. I think that would make a huge impact for targeting and like rather than having it go from the head of the model, being able to see it's anywhere on the model to anywhere on the silhouette of the opposing model.
So basically, if you can, correct me if I'm wrong, if you can draw a line from anywhere on your model to anywhere on their model, that's a valid target.
It's kind of like the space that your model takes up, figuratively. So if you can draw a line of sight to that, or anywhere in that space, then you can see the other one.
And that space is like the base width itself, like essentially a column going up from the base.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like the internal width of it.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. That makes sense. And if it makes more sense than being like, I can see the tip of your sword, so that's an eligible shot. That stuff's kind of a little annoying when that happens.
Yeah, and Tyler, that'll prevent you from not being able to shoot when you're playing Jimmy Kelly next time because your novitiate wasn't turned the right way, right?
Absolutely. It saved me a lot of times because I forget to turn my model the right way around, especially because I like to kit bash, and some of them have pretty dynamic poses, if you will.
Connor, what about you? What's one thing that you would change tomorrow?
The easy answer in me says put the Harlequin foregrip to more expensive because right now I think it's still a little cheap. That's a common thing I see for Harlequins, and I think would make them a little bit less frustrating to play against, especially when you're new to fighting Harlequins and have no idea what they're doing. Otherwise, simple change myself. I don't know. I think that should come back to me. How about that? I got to think really quick on what this will be. I've been trying to think throughout the past bit and haven't come up with a proper answer yet.
That's okay. Me personally, one of my boogeymen in Kill Team is Hand of the Archon, and I don't like stuff that goes through walls. And I think I have a little PTSD from the torment grenade, I think it is, when I didn't realize that you could target a spot because I had my models spaced out nicely and like they're 2 inches apart. And my opponent says, okay, cool, I'm going to throw it against this wall and hit both of these guys and now they're injured. So I think I would take away anything that blows up through walls. And like I said, I've only played Vet Guard once against them, but the demo mine is supposed to be a big boogeyman with them too.
You know, I'm just gonna say it. I think that the torment grenade is fine. Um, I think that it's definitely like mean for sure, but it's not so mean that it makes the team unbalanced, obviously, because you don't see them winning so much. Um, I do think that the demo mine can get a little oppressive at moments, especially because the vet guard has so much destructive power in the game.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think the torment grenade is broken or anything. I just that through the wall feels like it feels bad to me, especially when a lot of this game is based on like line of sight and hiding people behind stuff. So that's kind of where that comes from for me. And again, I think I've just like I played into it the first time at Adepticon last year and was super surprised. And then I played against Fabi one time and Fabi ran up to a wall and threw it through the wall and I was super surprised. So I think that's just stuck with me.
Yeah, that's fair. Getting shot through walls, especially like heavy walls, can be kind of weird. It feels bad, definitely, when something like that happens. It's like, oh, didn't realize that could work. And I'm glad you mentioned that because it made me go and look at the rules of the demo man on the blooded, despite knowing them pretty well. but it led me to see Fusillade. I always forget about Fusillade, as most of the community does, because it just sucks. It's a cool concept. I love the idea of a big machine gun holding down a wall or a hallway, but it never comes in the action. So what I think would be cool, simple change, make Fusillade do anything. And my solution to that would be either that it kind of works now like torrent where you can make multiple attacks, but for every like say there's two guys with it and I'm firing like a heavy bolter or something, so I got 5 dice hitting on threes. I shoot at the first guy, we go through the entire attack as normal, and then maybe at the second guy I now shoot with 5 attacks as well, but hitting one worse, kind of like an injury aura, or not injury aura, but like an Overwatch shot. I think that would make Fusillade maybe have a place. It might be a little too strong to have that level of dice going through, but if you specifically say it's a different target, I think it could be fun. It still probably won't come up, but it would make the guns worth considering.
So I think the fix for Fusillade is to make it so, all right, say you have two targets, they're within 1 inch of each other, and you shoot at the first one, it's a valid target, and you hit with shooting heavy bolter, so you have 5 shots with a legionary, so you're hitting on threes. Okay, and you hit 3 out of the 5 shots. Okay, those next 2 shots that you miss, you then have a chance to hit with a -1 ballistic skill, so hitting on a 4 on the secondary target with those 2 remaining shots.
Oh, I like that too. Yeah, that seems pretty fair because it's like the primary target was missed, but it's still such a wide area of effect. It goes to the other guy. Plus, it like makes sure that like Soul Reaper cannons or the rotary cannon on the Star Striders that have like 6 dice, that could get a little oppressive really quick if you're rolling like 12 dice or something. But the like misses become hits on the other guy, or like become chances to hit. That could work pretty well.
Yeah, I think we've grown up with a lot of Jesse Ventura and Predator and seeing how effective that is, and then we get to our games and it doesn't do that. So yeah, I think that's a great one. Great call out. Fusillade is just kind of a worthless rule, and we need to fix it.
Hopefully, if Kill Team Third Edition, whenever that comes out, that and like flamethrowers, those are the two big like minor changes I want to see. Make flamethrowers and big ass machine guns like actually worth taking.
So let's talk about flamethrowers. Flamethrowers are another one of those like cool weapons, but I mean, unless you're a novitiate who's running up the board, they don't really get taken much. And Into the Dark, they're a little bit better with the rules for that being lethal 5+. But how do we fix flamethrowers?
I think a general one that I saw, I think it was Acolyte, which is like a fan made. I like it. I'd recommend giving it a shot if you can. Acolyte is a like fan made version of Kill Team, kind of like D&D, but you play as an Inquisitor. They did something with the flame effects where there was proper inferno effects like across the board, so it wasn't just limited to sisters. I think that would be kind of cool, as well as like if the inferno stacks could actually crit if you got multiple, or stack if you get multiple crits. But another thing as well is that Inferno for that guy's next activation, or sorry, not Inferno, but flame weapons, kind of have like a stun effect, but rather than -1 APL, they have like -2 inches of movement the next time that model activates, because that way flamers have like the area of effect, which is already kind of useful, but you never see it. And B, it's a more utility based thing rather than a pure kill. And that can be really effective to make a lot of models move less to represent they're on fire, so they're having to pat themselves down.
Yeah, I like those. I've wanted to check out that Acolyte. I've seen it on Reddit and stuff, but I've never actually dug into it. It's pretty cool little addition to the system.
Yeah, it adds a lot of fun of just like being able to, kind of play like a story, which I think is the only way I'm ever going to convince my girlfriend to try Kill Team is like, hey, this is kind of like D&D, just using the same rules. Plus, it's fun to just make your own characters and come up with a story as always.
Now, is your girlfriend into D&D? Because I can't get my girlfriend to play anything. She likes puzzles, but I haven't figured out how to make puzzles into a miniature game where we can throw dice.
That sounds like a challenge for a really creative game designer for how to make that happen with puzzles. But yeah, she likes D&D, which is nice because it's very funny. She likes to play like a very just like run in and beat everyone up character, which is very amusing. It fits my dynamic of like I want to charm my way through this combat into a very like neat opposites attract moment. But the other thing would be that yeah, with hopefully her liking D&D, I'm like this is the next step, and maybe someday she'll want to play Kill Team fully. Oh, and it looks like Tyler's internet went out based on the chat, so this part's probably going to get cut from the podcast.
Good, we can talk a lot of shit about him. No, I'm just kidding. Connor, anything else that you would fix if you could? So we talked about a few slots. We talked about flamers, my grenades. What's the? I mean, what's your AdMech corner? What's the one thing you want to pick on AdMech besides hitting on twos?
Hitting on twos, obviously. Rangers not sucking. I don't think their ploys are worth taking, and I don't think Bolter with P1 for heavy is worth it. I think, or not even just the Rangers themselves, but the other alphas being worth taking, because we have 4 options, but the only one you're ever going to see is the Vanguard alpha, because he's the guy with Control Edict, which is the double activation for models nearby thing, and then Injury Aura, that's super important. I think Ranger Alpha to be worth taking, maybe like a free dash would be kind of cool to represent that's what their like 40k rules are. They get scouts, and they've always kind of had like movement shenanigans. So maybe a free dash no matter what, rather than being ploy dependent, would be cool. And Ruststalker Alpha is never going to see play because he's already great. He's got 5 attacks hitting at 2s with 4/6 rending and balanced. I think like he is the scariest melee profile in the game, but maybe an extra wound or 2, or like maybe a to represent the Ruststalker thing, kind of like a if you're near heavy cover, you can parry for free, kind of like some of the Kroot guys have special stuff for being their cover to represent him being an assassin. And the Princeps Alpha for the Infiltrator is very similar, where they hit on 2s, which is really good. And they've got a built-in service call, so the free mission action. That one actually occasionally does see play on loot, specifically on Into the Dark, where free mission actions is supreme. But you just don't have the roster space for him is the main problem. So he never sees play, at least on my roster. So yeah, I think making the other alphas worth taking would be neat.
And this has been Connor's AdMech Corner.
Yes, thank you for letting me talk AdMech. I appreciate it.
I'm actually really excited to get into the document you sent. So for those who don't know, Connor sent me over a Google Doc all about AdMech. He's even posted it up on Zach's site.
Yes, true. I gotta, yeah, thank you, Zach. That was the Zach I was talking about. Let me properly credit you. Disregardingdice.com. He's got amazing photos from Killstream, his games at Tacoma Open from last year, a couple of battle reports on it, and a novitiate's guide as well. But Zach's where I've now hosted, I think it's like 15 pages, and it's probably going to keep getting added because I had a couple of other people ask questions. Like, this should be good to go on it with it. So I'll have to at some point get my own site so I don't have to talk to Zach like every couple of days. Like, hey, I need some more stuff added to that, please and thank you.
I mean, shouldn't you be able to just like spit out a bunch of 1s and 0s to make your own website? Isn't that how AdMech work?
Yes, but I've not reached that full level of on the site and blessing yet.
Gotcha. Well, I'm gonna head to the coast this weekend with my girlfriend, and we're going to. I always take some hobby stuff with me, so I'm gonna bring. I think I'm gonna bring the AdMech, and I'm gonna start building my force.
Yes, this is the greatest news I've heard all week. Thank you for this Valentine's Day present, Chuck.
And then I'm gonna throw them directly in the trash.
I hate you. How dare you?
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Unfortunately, Tyler had some connection issues, so we're going to say goodbyes for him. You can check Tyler out at killteamcascadia.com, where you can find all of us. He's also at Lowbrow Minis on Instagram, I believe. My name's Chuck. I'm at Painting Caves Minis on Instagram. That's at Painting Cave Minis on Instagram. I think I'm going to post up my Beta Decima stuff so you can see my progress on it. And Connor, tell the fine folks where they can find you.
Yeah, very excited to see those Beta Decima. That board looks sweet from the photos I saw, so cool to see it hopefully someday in person. But best way to reach me is at Spanaway, SPANNAWAY, at literally everything. Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, whatever crappy new social media gets added soon where I can post photos and look at AdMech models.
And like I said, killteamcascadia.com is where you can find us. We do have a couple of events coming up still. There's about a week and a half left for our Tag Team Terror tournament, and we still have some spots open for that. And then we also are going to be launching soon the Blunt Force Beatdown on April 20th, if you get any of the inflection there. It's going to be a standard 32-player tournament here at Guardian Games in Portland.
And where will the tag team tournament be at as well?
The tag team tournament is actually going to be held down in Shiv Games in Kaiser, Oregon. So great place to play. Super nice tables to play on. Way more comfortable than most of your standard card tables. And Jeff's awesome down there too. So killteamcascadia.com for all that information. Get in our Discord and come say hi to us.
Yeah, show up. We'll have a great time. You can say, "Hey, I listened to your podcast," and feed into our egos even more. So thank you for that. And beyond just those two tournaments, I can tentatively continue to tease. Wow, that was a lot of alliteration. More Washington stuff coming, hopefully May. So keep eye out for that. And well into the advance of the year, make sure you're ready for July to come visit us at Tacoma Open. Thank you, Games Workshop, for putting that on. That'll be super exciting. And then October 5th, that weekend, make sure you have that clear so you can come up to Killscream 3, the greatest event in the history of mankind.
Yeah, and if you show up to any of those events, you can meet Connor in person and tell him in person why you'll never play AdMech.
Why do you gotta put this evil on me, man? Come on.